Hello and welcome to our February procurement talk. My name is Sarah Scudder. We, in conjunction with our three fabulous sponsors, decided to team up and bring this event series to the procurement community. Each month, we bring a different group of thought leaders in the procurement and supply chain space together to collaborate, to share stories, of course, to have fun, but to help each other really share knowledge and wisdom. Our theme for this year is called Upping the Ante, and we focus on having our panel share stories about how they're adding value to their company. One of the challenges often that happens is procurement sometimes has a difficulty being able to show how they're adding value to an organization. And COVID has actually brought around some really good changes in helping procurement really elevate their role in the organization. So with that, I want to welcome everybody to our procurement talk. And I want to give a big thank you to our three sponsors that make this series possible. I'm going to ask each of our sponsors to tell us a little bit about how their companies are innovating in the space. So Eric, we're going to go ahead and start with you in snowy New York. It's pretty cold there.
Yeah, it's not fun this week, but it's nice and pretty with the snow. Feels like kind of Vermont. So yeah, thanks, Sarah, and to the panelists and everyone else joining today. Rapid Ratings is proud to sponsor the 2021 procurement talks. And at Rapid Ratings, we're a SaaS-based algorithmic system enabling financial health transparency between business partners and transforming the way procurement teams manage enterprise and financial risk on both public and private companies. And so we're really unique because we source those financial statements for private company suppliers on behalf of our clients from over 150 countries. And so we've been really busy over the last year helping our clients mitigate risk from the COVID-19 impact because they're leveraging our deep analytics. And so thank you and enjoy today's discussion.
All right, Eric. Yeah, risk has been a really hot topic and something that I think is going to continue to be a big priority for procurement. So thanks for all that you guys are doing in the space. All right, next up we have Ken. Ken is actually traveling with the family, so he's not on video. He'll just be on phone with us, and Ken is also one of our sponsors. All right, Ken, you're up.
Oh, now can you hear me?
There you go.
Muted. Okay, you guys can hear me now?
We can.
Okay, hey, so Eric, I'm opposite from you. I'm here in Palm Springs at 75 degrees. We're headed back to Los Angeles. So sorry, man, about the snow. But hey, so this is Ken Boembrink at Worldwide Services. So we primarily focus on reducing instant savings to companies that need IT infrastructure maintenance. Anything pre-owned, any different OEMs. We provide a 24 tax support as well as next business day repairs on servers, routers, storage, all the IT kind of needs. So if we can help, we'd love to do that. And I'll probably reach out to all of you in LinkedIn after this. So thanks for joining the call, guys.
And thank you and have fun traveling and enjoy the sunshine.
All right, I'm going to try and mute. Let me know if I'm mute.
All right, and we've got our third sponsor with us today, Sanjeev. So Sanjeev, great to have you with us. If you could tell us a little bit about how your company is innovating in the procurement space.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sanjeev Senta, one of the co-founder of TechPoison. I'm based out of Chicago. It's freezing cold over here.
I'm afraid to ask how much snow you got this week.
It's insane. I think after a long time, I'm seeing so much of snow. I'm like very long time. So it's insane. And my brother, he missed the snow because he decided to fly back to India last week. So he missed the, but no, technology consulting company. time to time, we started as an app designing company, and then we transformed into a statement of work company and staffing company. This year, our primary focus has been SAP HANA migration, because most of the SAP system in 2027, it has to be on HANA. There is no other option. And as per SAP, there are close to 500,000 companies which uses SAP system. So it's a huge opportunity for us, where we have designed a tool to do all the migration. So this year, entire year, our focus is SAP HANA and Salesforce implementation.
Yeah, you guys have been very busy. Sanjeev and his brother opened up a really big office a few months ago. So they've been in super growth mode. And Sanjeev, thank you so much for being with us today and for sponsoring the series.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Alrighty, so with that, we're going to do a couple housekeeping notes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jill, and she is going to moderate our panel discussion today, talking about upping the ante and how our panelists are adding value to their procurement organization. So at the bottom, we have a chat function. So we want this to be interactive and fun, so feel free to post comments and we will engage and interact as a group. We also have the Q&A function at the bottom. So if you have any questions for the panel as a whole, for Jill, the moderator, or any of the specific panelists, feel free to put those in the bottom. And Jill will manage those throughout the hour as they come in. So do not be shy. We've got a really diverse and fun group of speakers today. So feel free to ask as many questions as you would like. So I want to introduce our moderator, Jill. Jill has become a really close friend of mine in the last year, and it's been really exciting to see her journey and evolution in the procurement space and becoming an entrepreneur and managing being a mom and all the craziness that's happened with COVID. So I'm not a fan of long, boring bios. I like to talk about fun facts about people. So I have a couple fun facts I want to say about Jill, and then I'll turn it over to her. So Jill is a marathon runner and has actually run 5 marathons, which I barely survived running a half. So I can't even imagine running 1 marathon, let alone 5. So you'll have to tell us a little bit about which marathons you ran in. She loves enjoying a cocktail at sunset on the beach. She and her hubby were both college athletes. And my favorite of all is that she's a children's book author. So my dad is a writer, and my dad teaches people how to write and is also an author. And so I have a special place for people who publish books. It's a lot of work. And Jill is actually sending me a couple copies of the children's book. So I can't wait to read it and promote it. So with that, Jill, I'm going to turn the discussion over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. I was on mute. Apologies. So welcome, everyone. We have an esteemed panel here, and I am going to let each one of our guests introduce themselves as they answer the first question. And if you have any questions, as Sarah said, please enter those into the Q&A. So I'm going to start with Angie. In looking at your experience, you have 30 years in supply chain, half of which is in maritime. With only 2 years in a direct procurement position, how do you deliver procurement acumen and ROI to your team members across your organization?
Hi, Jill. Thank you. I think, and a lot of people can probably relate to this, the most crucial part of my process is listening to the business need. And within that, you have to procure your SMEs, your subject matter experts within whatever scope that you are procuring. And the vital part of getting that feedback, in what I do is I organize it. And then I organize it to make an impact in the later decision-making process for the SMEs to make it easier for them. Because a lot of people, you know, in all the demos, especially with technology, you know, you see all these great little shiny objects, but how does that impact the financial aspect of what you're procuring in regards to not only the cash flow, what you're saving operationally, but the FTE engagement? So I really go to the business need, and I go to that segment of the procurement process.
Okay, awesome, Angie. Thank you. Do you mind giving us a quick background on your bio?
Yeah, I was waiting for that, but I was like, okay. Yeah, just 30 years in the industry with maritime supply chain, and the last couple of years procurement. Most of it's international, a lot of it's domestic. Grew up in the industry. I say that I grew up at Maersk. I'm now with Crowley, and definitely a couple of 3PLs in between. But I'm just so excited about where the industry is going, and I've seen it grow so much, and it's really interesting to hear the word supply chain uttered in the news the last 24 to 36 months. So people are really starting to learn about it, especially with what's going on globally. So yeah, glad to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I think we've become popular, and we didn't raise our hand. We had been raising our hand for decades.
Yeah.
So
Yep,
thank
that's
you.
true.
All right. We'll move on to Mark now. Mark, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I will dive into the question.
Sounds great. Mark Berlin. I've got 25 years of mixed background of procurement and supply chain, a little engineering and operations experience as well. I think, there was something that Angie touched on, and it's supply chain. What is it? If you look at Gartner's trying to drive a remodeled definition of supply chain that includes procurement, operations, and traditional supply chain, logistics, warehouse, inventory management, planning, and I cover all of it. When we think of supply chain, people say, well, it's not procurement. It is procurement, because when you think of procurement, it covers everything. So background, I think, yes, some people may have seen that I love magic. So I do have a collection of books that span everything from simple close-up things that you can do at the table to some of the bigger novelty items that you see in magic shows. I just love reading about it. So it's a hobby I've had on top of scuba diving. So two very diverse areas.
Awesome. Exciting. Well, you would be popular with my son. All right. So we're going to ask the question. So Sarah's favorite, marketing and print. What are some of the KPIs, so key performance indicators, you have used when negotiating marketing contracts that correlate to increasing sales?
Great question. A couple of things. Like Angie, I always look at the value that procurement can deliver, not only in terms of earnings, and you can actually tie back the money you save on contracts to the actual earnings per share. So I like to always give my clients or my internal stakeholders or even the procurement organization the value of what they're saving and why, as well as tie back to the working capital and cash flow. But some of the key things around marketing is what's the cost per acquisition, what's the cost per lead, sales and target growth, and actually getting inside my internal customer's head as well as with the suppliers. And I find that's very critical. Looking at the ROI by region versus the ROI for the whole contract, because it's very easy to say, hey, I hit my target, but am I maximizing value? Because marketing's handled differently. A space that I can speak to is we all have lighting in our homes. Well, guess what? At different times a year, the Northeast sells fluorescent lighting differently than they do in the Southeast or in the Southwest or in the Northeast. So how do you measure these sales when you're going out to the Lowe's and the Home Depots and the marketing elements? The website traffic that goes with that. The average time to convert a customer contract, cost per click. I think everybody's heard that on the marketing side. The bounce rate. Do your visitors find what they're looking for? Are they off to someplace else? So those are some of the things that I look at, but you can actually convert all of that back to something very simple. And that's the earnings per share, the working capital and cash flow for the company.
So are you including those KPIs within the contracts themselves, Mark?
Yes, I do. And it's very interesting. There's sometimes resistance by the marketing team when those are out there, because all of a sudden you're holding me responsible for a contract that I negotiated.
Right.
Well, no, we're measuring this together, and it's how do we bring everybody together? And more importantly, I try to identify to the internal stakeholders that, hey, wait a minute, if you're not measuring your suppliers, and the suppliers should be held accountable for this, many what I found marketing contracts or print solution contracts do not have these marketing KPIs embedded. And all of a sudden, the suppliers that were maybe receiving bonuses quarterly, I was amazed at how many contracts where suppliers receive bonuses quarterly, yet they cannot demonstrate the increased sales revenue to the company, either at a national or international or regional level. So within the US, as an example, you can break the US down into primarily 8 regions. So how do you hold your marketing companies accountable by region? All of a sudden, those bonuses don't become as big, and all of a sudden, many of these companies don't realize that they're receiving the full amount. They're receiving a lot less because the results aren't there.
Yep. Emperor has no clothes if you're not measuring, right?
That's right.
Good. Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Leanna, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into the first question.
Hi, can you hear me okay? I was having some audio issues earlier.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Leanna Torres. I actually have 14 years of experience in supply chain. I was a packaging engineer for quite a few years, and then I transitioned over to procurement. So a little bit of a different background here. I love to travel. I actually started to initiate a travel blog, which I have found that I don't have a lot of time for, but I do love to travel. And my goal is to see as many places as I can every year. So, I currently I'm the indirect procurement country manager for Forcia. US and Canada is my scope.
Awesome. Thank you. So in indirect procurement, you're faced with juggling a large number of suppliers. How do you right size your supplier portfolio and establish partnerships amongst your supply base? Okay,
so faced with juggling a large supply base because we're faced with like many different commodities, all centrally managed under the same umbrella. So the evaluation of the portfolio, just like it would with direct, is based on the spend. And the spend is obviously crucial consideration of your right sizing venture. So you need the suppliers whose capabilities are scalable, so that the service and the delivery and even the quality doesn't suffer if your needs increase for what's being offered. Consideration of spend and how much of that spend you would like to allot to the supplier is also key. So you find yourself considering how much of the spend is part of their business portfolio. Too much of that spend and you can lose leverage in future negotiations. Not enough spend and they might not consider your business valuable. So you have to find the right middle and areas for that spend. So I tend to consider a few items when I'm looking at suppliers for my right sizing venture. Supplier relationship in the past with the customer. Do they behave like a partner? Do they offer support when the customer's not happy? Financial health, in case of delivery or level of service. Are they financially healthy enough to support those payment terms that we deem necessary to maintain the organization's liquidity and maximize those KPIs? If their work is a service, specifically, we have a lot of that in indirect procurement. Do they have the right level of insurance to protect the organization if their workers were to get injured? So once you've narrowed that list and you found that sweet spot, you can create this understanding with your preferred supplier to your organization. That they are default for future business, highlighting that expectation of partnership and future savings associated with those partnerships.
Good, thank you. Jonathan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Perfect, thank you. Just want to make sure I'm off of mute.
Yeah.
So I'm Jonathan Schwartz. I manage the global operations and strategic sourcing function at MDC Partners. Still relatively new to procurement. I've probably been here for around 3.5 to 4 years. Previously, I did financial advising and investment due diligence. On a more personal note, I'm a big CrossFit and fitness enthusiast. I love competing, so it's been a bit of a bummer not having the ability to compete over the past year, but fingers crossed, we'll be able to compete at some time throughout this year.
So are you still able to CrossFit at your gym?
I am. So fortunately, the gym, fortunately in New York City, the gyms were able to remain open. It's definitely not the same, but you definitely take something rather than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the truth. Sanity is key.
Yes.
All right. So first question, Jonathan, how were you able to redefine the procurement process to set up your network with success in 2020, given all the changes that have happened in 2020?
Great. So thank you for that. Thank you for that question. So going into 2020, we were tasked with a very difficult challenge. And that challenge was, how does not only MDC Partners procure services, but how do the 50 individual marketing and creative agencies that roll under our umbrella procure services? So the procurement team took a step back and said, how do we do something that's very, very simple and very non-traditional? So we sat down with the procurement team along with legal and audit and tailored a process to leverage the existing relationships throughout our network. So that way, when we went to bid, it was non-traditional RFPs, and we were able to pick certain opportunities and kind of evolve the partnership throughout the network. I would say that we were extremely successful. In 2020, we were able to put through close to 200 contracts. And the procurement team was actually able to take a step back and kind of let the process play out on its own, with obviously different triggers, procurement having to jump in.
Great, thank you. We have a question from the audience for the panel, and someone can just raise their hand who would like to answer it. But how have travel restrictions impacted project delivery, timetables, pricing, and your relationships with the supply base on the indirect side?
Is that specifically for myself, or is that
anyone
for
who would like to answer it? Feel free to chime in. So Jonathan, if you want to dive in.
So I actually, I don't manage the travel side. We have a terrific travel manager who manages the travel, but we still move forward with our travel initiatives, engaging in with preferred partnerships, throughout the network. Okay.
So your suppliers haven't been impacted at all in delivering on timelines?
To be honest, I can't answer that question. I don't manage the travel aspect.
Okay.
I can answer that question. As travel's under our umbrella and indirect. Okay, so some of the travel restrictions have actually affected business because we're a global a company. A lot of our supply base is in other countries, and right now some of the things that have been done, we've been getting very creative, where some of our suppliers, or what I call partners, have found local or outsourced work here in the United States. So like if we needed support at a local manufacturing facility for a project that we're initiating, and I mean, I can't give details on projects, but recently we had it where that supplier outsourced the work to someone here in the United States to get someone to do the work. So we couldn't have that person with all the skill set that was needed to initiate, and it was for machinery. to get that started in our plant. But I guess what they did was they outsourced the work, and that person came on site, and they were able to kind of like, I guess, more so talk or walk that person through at a distance. So it has definitely it did affect price, as I believe. It increased the pricing of the final product. So, and in regards to traveling in general, internally, I mean, you know, at management level, a lot of people do travel, and it had been put to a halt because of all of the travel restrictions. So we were forced to figure out how to work virtually. So it definitely has had quite an impact on both business and how we do business.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answers your question.
Yep, I think so. Thank you so much, Leanna and Jonathan. All right, moving on to the second round. I'll start with you, Leanna. 2020 was a very challenging year for all in procurement. Are there some key takeaways or lessons learned that you can share that we can apply in 2021?
Let me first start by saying that even though I'm somewhat new to purchasing compared to the rest of the panelists here, this year was a challenging year for all of us in and out of procurement, and regardless of what role in procurement you had, whether it be direct or indirect, we had to adjust our traditional way of work to something unknown completely. We had to learn to be more personal. With lack of personal interactions, we now needed to be mindful of how we communicate it because it could be construed differently. We as leaders had to find new ways to motivate our teams and keep them positive as our roles slowly shifted to changes and challenges that were brought on by COVID. So we had to be a little bit more creative in the mediums used to communicate. I myself, I used FaceTime, I used Zoom, I used Teams, WhatsApp, whatever it took. To help keep that change in pace day-to-day interactions that seem to consume us as we all moved from that home office setting. So from a supply-based standpoint, we had to leverage our partnerships for potential cost savings and cuts. And we all learned to be more agile, shifting focus away from the traditional purchasing role to becoming experts and partners alongside other roles in operations and health and safety and human resources, promoting value in our partnerships internally and truly learning how other roles can align with ours in purchasing, creating optimal value by better understanding your customers and getting their buy-in and feedback. So all of us learned the importance of contingency planning as well. If that was not a practice put in place previously. Yeah. In my opinion, COVID was tough and drastically changed the way that we work, but in the end result, 2021 is we learned to work with a high amount of agility in how we carry out our day to day that may not have existed prior to. So,
yep, absolutely. Thank you, Leanna. There was definitely a silver lining.
Yeah,
and we'll be applying that going forward for sure. Jonathan. Second round, what were some of the tools you centralized and what was the biggest challenge that you faced in delivering value?
Yep. So throughout 2020, the madness that 2020 brought, we also centralized a lot coming from the center at the corporate office. It started with the spin up of a brand new entity, which we named MDC Global Technology Group. It acts pretty much as an in-house managed service provider and houses the facilities, HR, and IT teams that services the MDC network. Focusing on the IT side, we centralized our print initiatives. We centralized how we do our IT CapEx purchases. We negotiated a very aggressive leasing deal. I can't say the name due to confidentiality reasons, but it's a very, very aggressive and very, very attractive way which we purchase our IT CapEx equipment. We centralized our cloud consumption. When we did our data grabs, we found that cloud was being consumed, with the big three, and then they were finding on-prem. So we actually did a full migration of our network to the cloud and we negotiated very, very aggressive discounts for our cloud consumption. The biggest challenges that we faced was change management, to be honest. It's very hard when you have legacy employees and legacy processes the way that they're done. Fortunately, we had a very strong operations team. We had a very strong IT team, facilities team, and HR team. And with the collaborative team effort, we were able to put financial models together. And once you do that, the data and the numbers kind of speak for themselves.
Good. Thank you. So did you see all of those teams then working together collaboratively?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Good. Awesome. Thank you. Angie, how do you measure potential value within the procurement world, both pre-RFX phase and within the decision-making process phase? For reference, RFX is an acronym that encompasses RFI, RFP, RFQ. Apologies if that was not already known for the audience.
So one of the things that we did, and we do consistently, Jonathan mentioned this, is that we do work hand in hand with IT and project management. If you have a PMIP who's familiar at, consuming data and gathering it, and to where it makes sense to a multi-tiered business group, you're going to better communicate the value as it relates to all those stakeholders that are engaged. So that's step one. Mm-hmm. When you do gather data and supplier information in the RFX process, make sure that when you have it all together, you're not just spewing a bunch of information of pages and pages and pages. You're really drilling down to, hey, for the ops team, this is what matters. For the finance team, this is what matters. And most importantly, for the customer, this is what matters. So that being said, I do lean on Six Sigma. I lean on the voice of the business, mm-hmm. right? Because the business execution has to be realistic, right? Mm-hmm. The voice of the process, and that heavily involves IT these days, as we focus onwards towards automation, and the voice of the customer. So you have those pillars, if you will, with the voice of the customer being incredibly, I don't want to say the loudest, because it's more complimentary than that, but more impactful, with the voice of the business really aligning to what we deliver, right? And Leanne, I see you shaking your head because you're like, yep, we have to do this. But to Jonathan's point, that IT component is so significant as well. So that's really one of the ways that I encompass the value management as we progress through the RFX process.
So when you say voice of the customer, is that the supplier?
No, the voice of the customer is the customer. So all of us have different customers on this panel, mm-hmm. and that is whoever we are delivering to the end product, okay. And whether it's a service or something we consume.
Yep. So when you're getting that 360-degree feedback, are you getting input from the supply base as well on the process?
Absolutely. So this is where, again, Leanna touched upon this, the innovation of your supplier network. We have Crowley has a very strong focus on small businesses. We actually take pride in beating the metrics. It's almost like a daily conversation of how do we integrate SBCs? And it really is a passion. So that becomes almost like a baseline, but the innovation of those SBCs also becomes, what are they bringing to the table? What is their network? How can they drive, the capability at a local level? Mm-hmm. Because you can have these broad 3PL supply chain footprints and networks, but internationally as well. If you're going to ship over to, Guam, that local Guam supply chain person is so integral in, even getting something, the final mile or the final foot delivered to that final factory. So that becomes the voice of the supplier, if you will.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Angie.
You're welcome.
Mark, what are some of the processes or tools you have used to create alignment and maximize value to suppliers, internal customers, and deliver incremental earnings?
Yeah, it's another good question. Angie, I thought your voice of the customer analogy was great. And I like to work it around a concept called policy deployment. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but policy deployment is something that the Japanese have used for years. Leanna, you might be familiar with it in the industry you're in. But it's a great way to create what I would call consultative discussions with stretch objectives out there in place. And you address the challenges around project, people, and process to hit your short, medium, and long-term objectives. People aren't familiar with it, happy to send out a paper that can go out to everybody here. It'll be a very simple one-pager, but it really defines how simple it is. And it's really getting, putting your stretch objectives out there, defining what's on everybody's mind through the voice of the customer, whether it's internal or internal, but it's also the supply base. And sometimes the customer is included within the policy deployment matrix, understanding what the real challenge is to get to that stretch objective. What were they hoping for in the short, medium, and long term in the process? And more importantly, the thing that I think many of us forget in procurement positions, how can I help? Because at the end of the day, while I'm asking why I can help, I want my internal stakeholders to do the work, because then they have skin in the game. So I dole out the assignments so it does not fall upon me or my team. And I encourage my teams, do not do 100% of the work, because if it fails in any way, guess what? It all comes back onto your shoulders. So engage the stakeholders, engage the suppliers. In some cases, it may even be the customers, but bring everybody into the process and focus exactly on that, the process, because the process at the end of the day will yield the results.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you, Marv. Very insightful. I think that was an excellent question we all had there, and we hopefully gleaned a lot of insights. So Jonathan, we'll start with you. With all of the value your team brought to the MDC network in 2020, what was one thing you feel you could have done differently or better?
So thank you for that question, Jill. The procurement team and operations team created enormous value in 2020. The last KPIs I looked at, we achieved $7.5 million in run rate savings. We built out this beautiful 6-story New York City HQ that houses 10 of our agencies that exist in New York City. It was a $20 million project, which we built in the heart of COVID. We came under budget. We exceeded timelines. So value was brought to pretty much every single aspect of the business. With the rate at which we had to run to accommodate all those goals, communication to the individual aspects of the business and our agencies was probably the most difficult piece. And that's probably the most important thing that we're looking to change in 2021. You can create the value, but if you can't communicate it the right way in a seamless and effective way, it doesn't get appreciated.
Yeah. Awesome. So with the building, what value levers were you able to pull in meeting the timelines and delivering under budget?
Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of aggressive negotiations. It was a lot of late night discussions, with your inbox piling up throughout the day. Sometimes you have to find time late at night, early in the mornings to really get the kind of strategy done and those long-term goals. We created, we like to call it the office of the future. Mm-hmm. It's a wireless only approach here. I'm in this beautiful conference room. We call it the Apple store, because it's this glass, this glass conference room. But there's no more $100,000 conference rooms. There's no Crest-on panels. You don't hear any buzzing. Our room is powered by seamless technology, and we see this technology lasting for 10 plus years. This is kind of the proof of concept, because we're planning on doing other real estate consolidations globally. So everything is going to be modeled this way. So every MDC location you go into that's being built out, the technology is all going to be the same. You can operate it through the power of your phone with technology that we've built. So it's a tremendous space.
Awesome. Sounds like a dream versus what we've dealt with historically in some of these conference rooms.
I would say I would welcome everyone to visit once travel restrictions are lifted and we're able to have visitors in the building. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you're in New York City, I'd love to show you around the office, and I can invite our SVP, I can invite our global CIO who can do a demo and show you, how the technology works and how we think we've revolutionized the AV, IT, and security space.
Cool. Sounds like a plan. All right, Mark, how have you used other functional departments to maximize and create procurement value?
Great question. I dropped maybe a little bit of a hint in my last question there. And, what I try to do is engage the functional stakeholders here and asking them a simple question: how will we win as a team? Not as individuals, but as a team, because I try to tie it back to the earnings. And then I take that earnings model, working capital and cash flow, when departments need R&D money, as an example, say, hey, if we get this package into place, I will help fund some of the R&D efforts that you're looking at through the savings here. So it's, what tools do we need in place? What capabilities are needed from systems and people, and getting the people to own that in each one of the functional groups. But also, more important, listening to what my internal customers are saying. If they're saying yes to everything, what are they saying no to? Mm-hmm. And just the opposite is true. If they're constantly saying no, try and uncover what they're saying yes to that they're not open about, that's exciting them, but there are maybe other reasons that they're pushing back on, and understanding what's going to be most valuable to them in that arena. So I try to focus on, what I'll call the delivery process here. Some of it may be supply chain lingo. How is the customer requirement, or how is it received and processed? Where's the value going to be created, and what's important to them from a value proposition? Is it the money? Is it a quality? Is it a delivery or a service item? How do lead times impact what they're doing from the start of the project? Something that we discussed early on, that some of the project implementations may take a little longer. I'm experiencing some of that right now. So how do you pass the baton to people that maybe don't have experience, and coaching them through it? Where can we create opportunities for rapid improvements as individuals, and giving the functional teams the credit? And I found that when I give other functional groups chance to jump up on a soapbox or grandstand a little bit, by God, I've got more projects coming at me than I know what to do with, because all of a sudden everybody realizes, hey, this was successful. Here are other things. And maybe another business unit can benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. Be careful what you wish for, right?
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Leanna, how did COVID-19 change the role of procurement for you in 2020?
This is the $1 million question. So COVID-19 pushed us all into, I would say, forced us all to shift into overdrive. The traditional role that we had in procurement of cost control, price negotiation, and contract compliance completely shifted. We became these creative, what I like to call creative agile leaders. Mm-hmm. We were faced with very strategic, high value goals. We joined forces, as I mentioned before, with the operations team to find savings and understandings, and finding alignment with their KPIs as with ours, creating these joint workshops. We partner with the health and safety team as COVID altered our workspaces and our manufacturing facilities. So what we buy and how we buy completely changed. And certain commodities such as temporary labor and personal protection equipment rose to the top of the list as one of our most sought after products, and in line with changes put in place by government, specifically for non-production purchase. That shift in focus put us in this manufacturing value creation mode, and negotiation became more difficult, I felt, last year, as many of our suppliers kind of knew where they stood in the market. So those strategic partnerships that we had built prior to COVID really helped us to meet our demands and our customer needs. The new era of digitization came about. I believe Angie talked about that a little bit earlier. As many of us shifted away from our cubes and went towards home office, where we presented with many dynamics such as not only work, but now we had these children in virtual school. So what would normally have been a phone call or a coffee station conversation was now a meeting. So my day filled up with meetings. Many companies needed to amp up on technology. I know that we did. Our cloud-based platforms needed to be a little bit more stronger and are connected in chat. So this is all part of that non-production purchasing pie that just got shifted into high gear right at the initiation of the pandemic. So it was a really challenging year for those reasons.
For sure. Thank you, Leanna. So Angie, where do you see procurement evolving within the next 5 years?
I think a lot of us already touched upon that, and just to we've talked about digitization, and I think within that digitization, it's really important to have the business intelligence and analytics to find out what's impacting, the decision, not only the decision making process, but the success and the continuous improvement. Again, going back to Six Sigma, but we have a very strong business intelligence and analytics team. And I love how we can take the business acumen of experienced business leaders, and then you have these brand new eyes that are, just out of college or, young people coming up, and they look at things differently, which is, it's fantastic, right? So we have a good mix of that. But in addition to digitization and analytics, really there's a new concept coming out called co-innovation. And what that does is it takes the level of relationships just a little bit, not to the procurement, the buy and purchasing, to, okay, what if we, steer you, and Leanna probably knows about this, to this area of sourcing, right? Or this area of procurement. So whatever you're co-innovating, that becomes part of the language of not only the procurement process, but the contracting and then the implementation process. So there's a lot of really neat things that in the next, I think, half decade, that we're going to see much more transparency. And then we're going to see much more of an equal need and value based discussion. So, we enter this contract, how's it going to benefit multiple parties versus just, what's in it for me? So I do see that as a positive.
Mm-hmm. More collaboration and skin in the game for both.
Definitely.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So if there are any questions from the audience, you can submit those in the Q&A or in the chat. We do have a couple more minutes. And Sarah, is there anything you wanted to jump in and add?
So I'd like to ask each of the panelists, and you Jill, a question as well. My question for you is, again, the theme of our series this year is how procurement can add value to their company, and what specifically you are each doing at your companies. So I'd like to know what one thing each of you are most excited about this year. So we've had a lot of negative things happen last year and a lot of focus on the negative, and I want to shift that, and really there's a lot of amazing things happening. So maybe Jill, if we could start with you, what one thing are you most excited about this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of us have touched on this in the discussion today, but the internal collaboration, breaking down the internal silos, is absolutely critical. Something that recently experienced in the last 18 months at Elanco is just sharing best practices with our channel team, with the sales team. Procurement has so much insight that they can share and impact the top line. So there's always this focus on, cash flow, cost savings, push, supplier consolidation, but there really is a strategic skill set and value that can be shared with that sales side. That is free. Internal procurement teams are happy to share that. So what I see coming is that shared value, weighing in on complex contract negotiations, because usually your sales team, channel team are working with procurement at your customers. And you can help them in an invaluable way, the way no one on the outside can help.
Yeah, and Jill, I think the sales teams is often something that people forget about, right? And they're a huge factor at a company. I mean, they have major influence, and if procurement can really partner and collaborate with the sales team, you can really do a lot in regards to innovation and negotiating contracts and establishing strong supplier partnerships.
Yep. And protecting margin. I mean, there's a lot that procurement can educate sales teams on.
Yeah. Thank you, Jill. Angie, what about you?
I would just really like to piggyback on that, because if you can push that procurement process right where it aligns with the sales process, I agree with both of you so much, because what you're going out there and selling, what you're going out there and promising, right? For the entire company to be right there in step with the sales, that's just a fantastic thing to do, because that's the first part of the need cycle, right? And then the other thing would be the collaborative focus on, procuring product that digitizes what your natural service or your natural product is. What are you doing best, right? And then condensing either the production of that product or the delivery of that service with more autonomy, digitization, and technology. So that's it.
Thanks, Angie.
Thank you.
Jonathan.
So I'm most excited to see our network grow. 2020 was a year which we built a fantastic foundation, from how we procure items to partnerships, which you see being involved in our involvement of a network for the foreseeable future. So I'm excited for the foundation that was laid in 2020. I'm excited to see it grow in 2021. And I'm excited to see the partnerships that we've entered into truly flourish.
Thanks, Jonathan. Leanna.
Okay. I'm taking a little bit of a different direction here with my excitement revolving around strategy and CO2 neutrality efforts. So one of the things that we're doing this year is we're really diving deep into a more strategic look at our supply base and considering what we call market disruptors, these people or companies, I should say, that are thinking outside the box and finding ways to provide value in what I call disrupting the market by their new product or service that they're providing. So I think that it's something unique and that not everyone is thinking about that. And I think that that's really, that's something I'm excited about, because I'm starting to find suppliers that are creating that added value that our normal supply base is not supplying. So,
Leanna, that's really interesting. Jonathan, do you have a structure or process in place at your company for working with entrepreneurs or small businesses that are maybe disruptors or have really innovative offerings but aren't big companies?
So we actually, our CEO hosts Shark Tank pitches, and it's actually a very cool thing. It's for all MDC employees, and if you have an idea, you can actually pitch it on this, I put air quotes right now, Shark Tank idea. And if he likes it, he actually, he'll fund it up to a certain amount. We've worked, I'm actually working on right now, working with an employee who's had an idea that was greenlit, and we're working on kind of developing it within the network, which then hopefully we'll be able to go to market. So the MDC network, it definitely encourages entrepreneurial ideas and and entrepreneurs themselves.
So Jonathan, there's a new show called the CPO Arena. John Hanson started it, and there's 5 CPO judges. And each month they have a new tech startup come and pitch their product. So my company pitched, we were the second feature on the show, which is how I know about it. So the companies, you get 45 minutes, and it's all broken down into different segments, but you get like 10 minutes to pitch, then there's a demo, then there's a Q&A. So it might be something you want to check out, but there's some really cool tech companies that are coming up in the procurement space. And that's why he started the show. So startups have a way to really get their idea out there and get feedback in real time from CPOs. So they have a website, they have a LinkedIn. If you need any more info, you can shoot me a note on LinkedIn. But
yeah, really, absolutely. Thank you.
Really cool show that he started.
Thank you. I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah. And Mark, we were just going around and having each person say what one thing they are most excited about from a procurement perspective in 2021.
One thing most excited about, I'm going to talk around technology right now, not necessarily for my company, but where I see it going in general. I think for procurement, watching everything migrate away from traditional hardware, software to cloud-based, and the linkages to what I would call the traditional supply chain that hasn't been there in the past. And I see it more so within the last 2 years and leaping out. I see Microsoft doing some very amazing things with big data analytics on their procurement platform for small, medium, and large size businesses. I'm blown away with their capabilities for portaling, where your clients can see inside your operation to see what inventory levels are there, what's there. So instead of buying 10, and I'm not sitting here selling Microsoft, but it's a piece that I think is very valuable from a cost containment perspective, because all of us in procurement, somebody wants this piece of software, somebody wants that piece of software. And when you bolt them all together, all of a sudden now you're paying a dozen IT personnel, and there's an added cost to that. And Microsoft has actually come up with a way to integrate so many of these different suites out there that are unbelievable. And that value, I'm actually using a portion of this with one of our customers right now. We're beta testing a piece of this, and what our customers have access to in terms of when their product's leaving our facility, where it's at in the process, when it's going to arrive on time. I've got everything built in, and I did one-stop shopping. Now, it's a system that I was working with an integrator on, where we were bolting 3 pieces, I should say actually 5 pieces of technology together. And all of a sudden the integrator came back and said, we can save you quite a bit of money, and took about $450,000 of cost out for us, and said, guess what? It's now embedded within this suite. And to me, that was a big win. So where I see this going from a technology standpoint, I can pick up anywhere I go in the world. My CEO can see it. The CFO can see it. I can see it in Europe if I'm traveling there. I can see it anywhere in the US. So I think technology, I think training is going to be very big for personnel, and anybody in the procurement arena. I would encourage you, focus on your finance, because that is where I see the biggest challenge. Procurement people coming through the ranks are not able to elaborate on the fiscal benefits that there are, not only to the company, but to the functional disciplines in the company. I think the training piece is key, as well as the analytics piece.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. All right, so we are at our hour, so time to wrap up our conversation. I want to give a big thank you to Jill for moderating our panel discussion today. Hopefully you're not too cold. We'll send you some earmuffs and some mittens to go with your jacket. You're all bundled up. Thank you to Angie, to Leanna, Mark, and Jonathan. Jonathan, it's nice to actually see somebody in a real office. I think you're the first panelist Leanna, are you at the office too, or are you home?
I'm home.
I think Jonathan's the first panelist we've actually had joining us from a real office. So this session was recorded. We will make it available next week. It will be on our YouTube channel. We'll share it on social. All of the speakers will get a copy out of as well. So if you wanted to go back and reference something that was said, or you want to share it with your networks, we'll be able to do that. And our next procurement talk will be March 9th at 1 Eastern. Again, we do host this once a month, the second Tuesday of the month at 1 Eastern. Each month, it's a new group of speakers and a new moderator. We like to give different perspectives from all different types of industries. So thank you all for joining us today. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
See
Thank
ya.
you.
Thank you.